Welcome to Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180 for the best in Saturday Talk Radio at 1 o'clock, and on 1230 KGEO at 10 o'clock Saturday, and for the best in Wednesday Talk Radio on 1410 KERI on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And now, Clay, we're in 1000 KKIM, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
You know, it's funny, I was back in Washington this week, as I told you, and ran and had dinner with a friend of mine. He said, "Hey, Clay, I'm driving down the street, and I heard you in Albuquerque. I couldn't believe it."
Isn't that funny?
He called me, and he said, "Yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at."
Your host is Clay Koerner, and I'm Marty Pay. Oh, we got a lot of feedback in the background there. And behind the big board is our producer, Greg Held. So, Clay, we had a great show last week with Henry Bushkin, Johnny Carson's attorney.
And he did a great job. It was really interesting to hear about Johnny and the problems he had with General Life.
Yeah, and I'm going to be really excited to have him back in the fall when that book comes out.
Reading his book, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a great book. Rockwell was a great guest.
Rockwell's always fun.
Yep, and then I had a lot of fun with George Will. I mean, he's been on my short list of people that I've always wanted to talk to, so I really enjoyed his answers. He had a lot of good insight.
Well, the things he talked about are taking place today.
Yes, they are. We've got a great show lined up today. In the second half, we've got a guest we've had on before, Hollywood reporter, New York Times bestselling author, James Hershen. But right now, we've got a great, great guest that I can't wait to interview, Dr. Joel Kahn, talking about a book that will be out next year called Prevent, Not Stent. Dr. Joel, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Thank you. I'm excited to be speaking to New Mexico.
Well, and California.
And California.
Oh, well, even more better.
Yeah, we got three.
My language.
Yeah, 3 stations in California, 1 in New Mexico. So I think next time they're going to put us in Wyoming, we're really going to expand.
Yeah, we're really growing, aren't we?
But then again, you're in Detroit, so not that there's any straight lines.
Careful. We're hopeful.
Not that there's any straight lines using Detroit, right? So, prevent, not stent. I like that. Now, you're a cardiologist, but you have another little title that I've heard you use. Let's see if I can find it here in my notes.
Interpreventional.
Yes, interprevent. Could you explain
it's kind
what
of a fun play of words, but I was trained and still practice to do heart catheterizations, put in stents, the highest technology, what gets the press, what gets the hospital's attention, what patients usually want. And I am also a preventative cardiologist. I believe more and more that we absolutely have some great technology to take care of you when you're really sick, but we should be focusing 10 years before that, and maybe even in the grade schools, which is 30 years before that. And we know so much that we can do to prevent this. I always talk, when I talk to public, I talk about, let's not talk about general. Do you know anybody who's died of a heart attack this year, or a stroke, or maybe lost a leg to diabetes or on dialysis, and think that 80% of those are back out there enjoying life, alive, visiting grandkids? I mean, because that is the number. About 80% of these chronic diseases are a situation that is out there with food and stress and toxins and lack of exercise and smoking, and it's just a shame. And we can do better. We can do better starting this interview. Yeah.
Well, we've got you for 2 segments here, and I'll tell you what, I've got a ton of questions for you. But in the interest of disclosure, I'm diabetic. I've had 2 stents. Thank God I haven't had one in 4 or 5 years. And Clay here has had 2 bypasses. So
that's a HIPAA violation, Marty.
What's a HIPAA violation?
You just disclosed my health problems. Isn't that true, doctor? Didn't he just make a HIPAA violation?
If your HIPAAs are thinner than your waist is, you're in good shape. If your waist is bigger than your hip, you're too fat.
Well, I won't disclose.
No comment.
I won't disclose Clay's physical condition.
Not a Skype conversation. I can't see you two gentlemen.
But I've just lost about 25 pounds, so one of us is the skinnier of the two. So
that would be me.
Yeah, I don't think so. But go ahead, Clay. Do you have a question for me?
Well, I would just, as Marty alluded to, I've had 2 bypasses. One was 30 years ago, and one I had about 8 years ago. And I'm wondering, where were you 30 years ago when I needed intervention rather than a procedure?
Well, to give credit where credit is due, we have an engineer named Nathan Takin who started in the 50s and 60s due to his early heart disease, probably about the same age that you found about yours. And as an engineer, his mind was going, and he read everything he could find. He looked at, it was very interesting, he looked at before World War II and during World War II. You would think heart attack rates would go up in Europe during World War II, a little bit of stressful time. They actually went down dramatically, and he did the research, showed if you stop eating fat, people were poor. They had no chance to raise their animals. There was little access to meat and dairy. And heart attack rates fell in half in the countries that were part of the Nazi regime, and went right back up the minute animal fat and protein became back in their diet. And that got Nathan Pritikin going in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then people like Dr. Dean Ornish around 1990, and Dr. Esselstyn at the Cleveland Clinic in the mid-'90s. So there have been people out there. But, boy, now that you got a Bill Clinton and a Carrie Underwood and athletes, we even had Carmelo Anthony go vegetarian for 2 weeks and play like a fiend in the NBA just recently. I mean, there's just a lot more talk about it, and I welcome it because it's one of the ways we can stop the trend of diabetes, heart disease, dementia, arthritis, liver disease, is speak out about eating better.
You bet. We're having a conversation with cardiologist Dr. Joel Kahn. Dr. Joel, I know the Pritikin diet pretty well. I used to, as a guest, I went to the Institute when he was down in Santa Monica, which is where I go bike riding quite a bit. But that really was the first low-fat, high-protein type diet. Is there drawbacks to the high protein? Because, you're looking at a lot of meat in that diet, fish, which is good, but there's also a lot of meat that you can have in that diet.
The Pritikin diet has shifted a bit to the current one that they recommend at their center in Florida. I mean, Nathan Pritikin had an almost completely vegetarian diet that he designed at his center and showed in his own life and his own health that it could reverse heart disease. And reversing heart disease is a bold statement. Cardiologists don't tell patients, you don't need to have these blockages to the extent they are. You just got to take 3 weeks and eat different and then don't stop. So it has transitioned. They've added back in more meat than there used to be in the Pritikin diet itself, and I don't know that that's necessarily a good move for the health of patients, but they're a pretty smart group. So there is no heart reversal diet that has a lot of meat in it. In fact, I love talking to people. People are fascinated. There's 5 places in the world where there's more people that live over age 100 than anywhere else, and live over age 100 in good health, what we'd like to see. Little arthritis, little dementia, little cancer, little obesity, and those 5 places, they're called blue zones. They are not purely vegan societies, but boy, they have less than 5 to 10% of their calories from any animal product, dairy, cheese, meat, fish. They eat largely grains and fish and seeds and nuts and beans, lots of beans, and they're all very different. They're all over the world, but seems to be a good model to pattern ourselves after. Well, I'm very concerned about this high meat trend that some people call caveman or paleo. It's totally unsubstantiated in terms of what it does to your heart arteries.
I'm not sure our government would agree to you that we want our people to live to be over 100.
I agree. There are personal concerns, societal concerns. If you don't utilize the healthcare system, it wouldn't necessarily upset the government and its funding too much. But the last 10, 15 years of our life are very expensive years in this country because of chronic illnesses and surgeries, chemotherapy. But a lot of that can be prevented so we enjoy our lives fully. And it's, I talk all the time, the power of the fork. I mean, where you put your fork, and get educated. I beg my patients to read a book or two a year. If they're going to read a book or two that's a fiction or a sports or history, read a book or two on nutrition and health. Just like you were trying to rehab an old car, make sure you know how to rehab your body.
Well, I just got back from Washington, D.C., where I was at a conference, and one of the speakers came in from the Obama administration, was talking about health care and health care delivery and end-of-life care and treatment. And they basically stated that if you had 3 to 6 months to live, really we're not going to go ahead and give you any procedures. We're just going to give you some medications to make sure you're comfortable so that you can die in comfort.
Very controversial topic. Mm-hmm. More controversial if you talk about 3 to 6 years instead of months. I mean, if we start having, if this current trend of high processed foods, gas station foods, box store foods, fast foods, junk foods, keeps adding our weight up and up, keeps adding to diabetes, heart disease, unfortunately, we're going to see a lot more people end up on dialysis. We're going to see a lot more people end up needing advanced cardiac procedures with bad hearts, and it's going to be very expensive. So are we going to ration that kind of stuff in 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, and 50-year-olds? I mean, these are going to be tough questions. We should be increasingly putting not just attention but dollars behind true prevention. I mean, it may have to be legislated like Mayor Bloomberg in New York. People, sometimes pull back. How can he say I can't have more than a 16-ounce soda? Because we're paying for that gastric bypass, and we're paying for that amputation of a leg that results from diabetes. And diabetes is a foodborne disease in adults. It's no different than dysentery. You put the wrong food in, you get the illness. Change the food, you stop the illness. And that's true of heart disease and cancer and arthritis. So somebody's got to take responsibility, and probably Mayor Bloomberg right now is speaking out as loud as anybody in this country, which is great. I'm all for it.
Okay, when we get back from the break, you just hit something I really want to talk about diseases like these being foodborne, and also diseases like, say, fibromyalgia. So when we come back, let's talk about that, okay?
That'd be great.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180.